There we go. Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. It is the Creativity 202 check in for Sunday morning, January 8th, 2023. We'll start with a quick check in the order I see on the screen. Good morning, Chun Long. How are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Everything's well. Just celebrate the New Year. Um, we actually have a Chinese New Year coming in the coming weekend. Get ready to that. I hope.
Morning, Tom. How are we? Tom 1. How are we doing there, Tom Sullivan?
Oh, I'm Tom One. Doing okay. Glad to be back. I watched some recordings and you guys are really amazing. So, uh, I hope.
Everybody's been crushing it. Yep. Morning, Ernie.
Good morning. Everything is beautiful still. Had nice weather here and things are going well. I'm starting out the new year with not too many problems, so it's really good. I'm happy so far.
Awesome. Tom 2. How are we today?
Going well. We're above freezing consistently now. That'll change, but for the moment, it's pretty darn good. And all's well, family, and wonderful celebrations. Good to be back.
Great. How we doing, Ken?
Yeah, very good. It's been poured with rain just now. We've had kind of variable kind of weather. Sorry, it's a typical British conversation, not taking it to the weather. But
Yeah.
no, it's just yeah. But they're all good. Working on something which I will share later. So yeah, I hope.
Good morning, Sanal. How are you? Good morning, Sanal.
Oh,
How
hello.
are we?
Sorry.
Sorry, technical difficulty on our end.
You don't need the detail. Hello, everyone. Sorry to have missed you last week. Happy to be back and see your smiling faces. All good over here, bar the weather. But yeah, looking forward to today. I hope.
Yeah, good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Happy New Year. Good to see everybody again. Sorry we missed you guys last week, but yeah, we're all fired up and ready this week. I managed to get out for a run this morning before the rain set in, so I was pleased about that. Normally I'm fretting it if I can't get out when I've got it in my head. So anyway, so that was good. I hope.
And good morning, Dan. How are you?
Oh, good morning. Good to see you all back again from last week, and Jeff and Sanal, who I haven't seen for a while. I'm doing well. We're here in Silver Spring, Maryland. Weather's nice. We've just been getting ready for company, but managed to get the house cleaned up a bit before the class. I hear my dog was just barking. Maybe she wants to get back in the office, but it must be somewhere else in the house. Anyway, that's it for me. I'll talk some more later, I hope.
All good here in Kansas. We're getting ready to fire up the diesel engine and get things moving this year. I was kind of in the doldrums for a while, but I feel like I'm back in the saddle, ready to go. So, in honor, that looks like Remington behind Dan there. So, love that piece of work.
Yeah, that was from my mother and father-in-law. She moved into a retirement home, so that was my prize that I got for driving out to Kansas last summer. It was very carefully and lovingly brought back across 1,500 miles because those feet are very thin, and if it was mishandled, the weight of the top of it could easily break it.
I have mine too.
Yep.
I love this
Oh.
thing.
Yeah.
And it's from my father-in-law. It's really interesting because it's from my father-in-law as well. So
Uh,
Nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into the sacred circle, and let's get her going. I should also note, just before I go in, I had a little conversation with David Boji, the master, true storytelling there, and I had demonstrated for him at the last quantum storytelling conference our little technique of the one word summary at the end of each little session before, and he just thought that was amazing. He's been trying it too, and he thinks it's a real breakthrough. And what spontaneously occurred in my mind was the idea of the universal breathing, the yin and yang that is happening with these stories. So you work hard on, crafting the outlines of that story, and then when you come in and it's your turn, as we know, we get inspired, and the story just naturally expands to its comfortable limit. It encompasses, and it has a unity like a giant balloon, or a hot air balloon in my case. And then before the sacred session is over, and you've inflated your balloon and listened to all the other balloons, and then it sort of compresses back into a seed, what you really get is the expansion, the natural expansion to the natural limits, and compression down to that tiny little theme, almost like processing gold or something, or rendering gold. But you get the expansion and contraction, but it locks into the artifact of that one word that gets carried forward, and that really completes the cycle. And because it's a seed, it starts that next. It already implies that forward next cycle of growth. And then I realized, there's always the one seed that we comment on and commit to and think about, but there's all the other ones are still in there too. So you get a handful of seeds and you pick one. So anyway, he and I have been discussing a lot about the concept of artifacts as those anchoring points. So we've added that to the David Boji narrative science theory, or narrative inquiry theory, that and the idea of the sacred word at the end. So we're making important contributions to the community of practice. And I still can't get over how at the Quantum Storytelling Circle, the annual conference, you had all these expert storytellers from all these different disciplines and whatnot came together to talk and present their research and all that. And I ran one of these circles, and it was don't underestimate how hard it is to get a bunch of storytellers to shut up and listen. That was sort of the essence of the spontaneous lecture I gave them, because I watched their tendencies to just, hey, I'm just waiting for my turn to talk. So there was not really that idea of sacred listening and deep listening. And even with the Zoom, in their mind, even with the Zoom session, which they didn't think was going to be as good as in person, we did a mix. Within 15 minutes, 3 or 4 people were breaking down in tears, and there were hugs going on all over because of just the power of the existential feelings, the experiential moment when the story has been freed to really tell itself. That's really significant. I'd been thinking this weekend about some ideas of, hey, why don't you put a timer on people? And I rejected that idea because, or placed it in another context, because in the sacred story space, the whole point of this thing is to unpack everything else in order to free the story to be genuinely what it is. And that when that happens, you guys, as you know, are often surprised by what you found yourself saying next. And if you are walking into that circle with this your own personal mental structure. Hey, I'm going to fit it into these 3 minutes, or I'm going to try to score points or meet these other. You're trying to contain that story with whatever framework you're putting on it. Whereas the whole point of this thing is to get out of all of that, is to surrender to the story. And I've never said that phrase exactly in that way, but that's exactly what it is. It's having the courage and the trust and the confidence and the support from the circle to be able to surrender to the circle and surrender to the story. And the story knows how long it should be and is respectful of the other people that are in the presence of the story. So it's not trying to hog the mic or anything like that. So I do want you to continue to be free to trust the story. Let it tell itself. And however long it takes is what it was needed. So I don't want you to feel under pressure or constraint to do that. And where else do you get that in the regular, business management, social world, where there's sort of all these other constraints always coming in that are causing you to make choices about what to reveal about the story or how to package it or how to comply with a certain formula or structure or format to fit in. We're not trying to fit in our stories into any other preconceived notion. The whole point of the sacred story space is to create the safe, trusted, truthful space that will expand with the story to the limits of the universe. The universe is large enough to contain that story, and it wants to hear it. So that was that was my moment of Zen, this week. And I wanted to reinforce that idea before I forgot. And much like what I just said, that's an example of a story that wanted to be told that I hadn't even prepared to tell. And there it is. So that's going to be my story for this week. Aho. And here we go. Tom 2, I saw you first, then Ernie.
Yeah. So good morning and good afternoon. I've just been playing with this idea of the pressure with high performance creativity and understanding beliefs and the relationship between beliefs that I have and what's underlying them. So the kind of layers I'm seeing in myself underlying those are, there's my neurology, which is sense and respond, sense and respond, sense and respond, constantly taking in millions of bits of information and choosing what to do with them, what to react to, what not to. And then there's the emotional circuits that are firing off of those and it kicking in fear, greed, joy, a whole range of emotions. And those emotions are, as best I understand this, being constructed from the sensations in our body and our words, our limits to be able to describe things through words. And then there's the narrative that just starts up in my monkey mind, reinforcing things. And so I feel like every trade can be a high pressure situation of if I let it. that could be a narrative I have, is every trade is a high pressure situation. Or I could say, well, I've reached the place where I can be disinterested. And there is no pressure because I'm in, I know where my stop is. It's within the realm of a working system. And I don't need to worry about it. I just need to execute it to see what it turns out to be, and manage it, and let my firemen manage it until it's break even plus dinner for two, and then the science experiment. And so understanding that capacity to restory the narrative, because when I feel like it's a high pressure situation, that's an opportunity to explore, well, what's the narrative I'm telling myself about this? And how do I consider the other choices? How else could that plot turn out? What are other ways I could frame that narrative in my mind when I get into the, oh, this is really high pressure, and oh, this emotional process is going on, and my story about it is X. So what I found a way very useful from Ken's exercise for us was to look at, well, how might I tease that apart by having a trade frame, a standard trade frame of, well, here's where it could go from minus 1Z. And it could also become a collapsing dragon out of that trade frame. And it has this quality grade I could give it, which would help me begin to shift from being attached to the trade to being disinterested and just trying to observe and evaluate and decide when to exit. Those were my ahas this week. Aha.
Ernie.
I was about when the exercise or the lesson talked about disassociating yourself. And when I was 12 years old, I went to a church camp, and we had something called, well, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a way for us to get to know each other. And so, like during the day, we had something, a little card or something we called Susie. And if you had that card at mealtime, you had to sing a song. And so during the day, whoever had it would try to, stick it with somebody else. You had to do it in the presence of somebody so that, you knew you had it. And so for several days, it was fun sticking somebody else with it and then watching them have to get up and sing a song after we had our dinner meal. Unfortunately, it wasn't so funny when I got it. And I was terrified. Me singing a song would be torture. And I did not want to do it. I mean, I went from from being a perpetrator to being a victim, and it was more fun being the perpetrator. So anyway, whenever and I didn't even know I had it until we were in line about to go in. And at that point, you're stuck. And I went into a cold sweat. I mean, I really, really did not want to do it. And so I sat down there in front of my food and I couldn't eat. It was like I just did not want to do it. I was trying to figure out there's got to be, I wanted to run. So anyway, I wound up getting up there, and uh, and I was really terrified. And as I stood up there, the first thing that came out of my mouth, I remember, is that I do not want to do this. And everybody was laughing. Um, and and I just I had gone into a cold sweat. I just remember I was really terrified. But anyway, I think what I wound up doing was attacking everybody, because whenever I said that, I remember, people were trying to be helpful. They were laughing, and so something just switched in my mind, and I, it was a disassociative state, I'm sure, because I really don't remember exactly what happened, but I just wound up reacting to the crowd. They would say something, I would respond, because I was trying to do anything to not sing, and it wound up being very funny. It was very amusing, and I just remember when I finally got to sit down. How everybody was saying, "Boy, you're really good. This was, you should be a stand-up comedian." And uh, and even years later, whenever I'd go to church and run into these people, they would say, "Oh, I remember. You remember when you're stuck with Susie?" And it's like, I don't want to even think about it. So I really understand what that disassociative state is, and had that experience, and it was a part of my life, when I was about 12, 13 years old. And so it's an interesting thing. And it was, I really thought about that as I read this, and to think that I understood what it meant. And because I do remember that experience, and I remember that it was almost uh, like I could watch myself, like I really wasn't there, because and how badly I did not want to be there, and being so terrified of it, and not knowing what I was going to do, and then just letting go. And it was like there's something within, that existed that helped me get out of that situation. So it was a great experience, uh, in part of, I guess, growing up. And I guess it's now making that a part of my investing life. I think that's it's an interesting perspective, and I'm looking forward to exploring that more. Um, the other thing I wanted to say on the trader's exercise, going through that, buy P1, sell Z2, I didn't know exactly how to approach that. Whenever I first started with the tortoise thing, the regression line crossover is what I really identified. I started to see how important that was. It was one of my first aha moments, I think, recognizing that. And to me, it was like, oh, and the P1 entry, it's like the range line crossover. And for me, the P1 is like the barking dog. And I think I'm stealing a story that Ken must have told years ago or something, that it wasn't that P1 is the entry point, but it's like having the dog barking. So something has happened, and either the dog is in the yard coming to the house, or the dog was at the house and is leaving the yard. But the dog is letting you know that something's going on, and you want to look to see what's happening. And so that's how I think that was one of my first epiphanies about the regression line crossover and the P1 entry. That it wasn't necessarily an entry. It could be, I guess, for an aggressive person, but that you went from P1 through P7, and so for me, the P1 was what I think what Ken may have called the barking dog. Either something's happening, but the other thing could be going on is that there's a squirrel or a rabbit in the yard. So it's not always something, but it is like a good alarm system. So but I was really trying to understand the drawing. So I was going through the chat room, and I think this must have been about what, 5, 6 years ago, that it must have been a big topic for the chat room. And so I knew I wanted to make this quick, because I'm really going to be interested to hear Sanal her reaction to the P1 system, because whenever I went back into the chat room, there are a lot of entries from Sonal, but it wasn't that Sonal was really talking about it. Everyone else was coming to her. Sonal, this was really great. You know, what was your reaction to this? And so it was that was fascinating. And then being the wonderful person that she is, she's helping everybody in the chat room because, and they're all coming to her because they're recognizing the reaction that she had to the P1. And so that was great. So I'm going to say aho because I'm looking forward to hear what I really want to hear about what you experienced whenever you first recognized the value of the P1 and what went through your mind. I hope that you share that a little bit because it was really great reading people's reaction to what you had done, Sonal, and I can tell that was, you must have had an interesting experience with that from what I read. So aho.
You know, I have to point out that he just did to you what was done to him by putting you on the spot for that reaction. You know?
Oh,
So,
okay.
Susie, you just Susied Sonal.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, no pressure, Sonal. Enjoy your meal. Jinlong.
I'll jump in quick. Start with my usual way, work in progress. So, my word of the week last week is SWOT. I write down that and try to do a SWOT analysis. But that idea itself scared me, you know, just scared. So I think about that, meditate on that. So the first question come out is, do I want to change my course if after I do the analysis at this age of time of life? So should I switch to something else, stop doing what I'm doing? And then the answer strongly is no, I don't want to change. So the question becomes, what is my weakness I want to focus on to improve? Instead of doing a deeper analysis, just focus on that. And then I think my answer is, yeah, I have a plan to learn, to study. I don't have a good plan to treat. So the answer is it's a lack of action plan. You know, how do I start treating again? That's the answer I realized. So the next question is, so if I do start to treat, what time frame, intraday or swing? I think about that. You know, what is bothers me is, you know, in past 6 months, I learned so much about intraday trading. I did the simulation trading. I did some live trading. Then the question still is, should I do the intraday trading? Should I do the swing trading? Then I thought about what is the middle way. And I remember, oh yeah, that is one swing a day. So that's the thought about the SWOT analysis. So I quickly switched. That probably take me half day. A lot of emotion come out, all the psychological issue come out again. It's not a enjoyable experience. Think about that anyway. For me, it's a painful. It is painful because I recall all those losing trade, big mistakes. So that taken me about a half day. So I quickly switched to, okay, I review my notes, all the notes I take. So there's some quick notes I take when I learning. There's some quick notes from what I did in the form of a learning journal. So it's end up I have consolidated about 20 action I want to do. I haven't finished. That's taken me about 2 days. So why I do the action list? So one is come out, I still want to finish the Mark Bushy market timing lessons. I reviewed that a couple of weeks ago. It's not really finished. It's not finished because, yeah, I learned something from that. I don't have a trading action plan. How do I use that learning for my trading? So I spend the remaining days of that last week to study again, just read read the handout, watch the video again, try to find out how can I use that in my trading if I do start to trade again, to write up an action plan based on that. Then during the process of watching, reading, just thinking, how do I incorporate what I learned from Ken, the regression line crossover and Bollinger Bands? How do I use that? So just take notes about that. That's what I did last week. I think my productivity is better than the week before. That's it. Then last night and this morning I go to the creativity 202 lessons and did the Twitter exercise. Here is my version of the exercise. What does this concept diagram suggest to me? That is, all creative thinking has to be done before entering the battle zone. The battle zone is the trade, right? I have to brainstorm all possible scenarios outside the battle zone. Once I enter the battle, see the battle zone, see the pattern P1, I have to overcome fight or flight. That's not what I need to do. If I let the fight or flight dominate my thinking, the following might happen. First, I may regret entering the battle. Just reach the stop quickly, get me out. That's a flight away from the battle. The other thing may happen, I may quickly take small profit and just see Now the trade go far beyond the 2R. The another scenario maybe, you know, I'm paralyzed. There's no action. Seeing the price just fluctuate and eventually take a 1R loss. That's what the diagram suggests to me. How could you explain this diagram to a novice trader? I put it another way. How do I understand the diagram? So there's a statistical way to understand the price action, right? That's the Bollinger Band framework from minus D1 to D0 to D3. That's the way we understand the potential price action. Then I have to see the trend reversal and the start of trending behavior. That's the P1 pattern. Then the next thing is my trading goal, my objective, my target is changing with time. The price action evolve with time. I have to manage it, exit with time. So how to manage the exit is crucial. What key concept emerged? I think the sniper and the moving target. The trader, I am the sniper, but the target is moving. How do I shoot? How do I manage? How do I stalk? What kind of mindset? You know, the first is no attachment. The target is moving. I cannot attach to my analysis. No matter how good my analysis is, I have to adapt the new information. So the no bias, what happened to me, you know, if I recall my trading, you know, I have a directional bias. I want to take long. I did take a long position. I want my target move into my way. If it doesn't, you know, I don't accept it. That's how I make trading mistakes. The second mindset is not judgmental. You know, I cannot judge my trading when I trade. If I make a loss, it's a loss. If I make a win, it's a win. Other than that, I have no judgment on that. I shouldn't have a judgment on that. I have to move on, you know, take another trade from the next target, keep firing. The third mental mindset is no resistance. You know, I have to accept what happened. You know, I don't let the trade dominate my sentiment. I think that's the key mindset I have to have. No attachment, no judgmental, no resistance, and acceptance. That's my trader's exercise. Then I have a plan for next week, maybe take a couple of weeks. The plan is decide one core trading strategy. That could be the Bollinger Band squeeze. It's very similar to sideways quiet channel because I have traded before. I really like it. And then I did extensive back testing. So also inspired by Constantine trading, you know, his big R all come from those quad sideways channel, one that's breakout, the bigger there. So my plan is, if I do start to trading, I have to have a core trading strategy. That could be the Bollinger Band squeeze. I learned that from Chuck Wigman. He called that Bollinger BB gun. Then the next item in my plan should be modularize my trading, such as the standard position sizing. And no matter what strategy I trade, I should have a standard way to position size my trade. Right now, I'm thinking use 2 daily ATR to be my standard size. Then I had to standardize my watch list and use stock charts to the scanning. Now, I don't want to spend too much on the scanning work. I have to use that. Probably that would be 1 minute scanning and a couple of minutes look at the charts. Then I really need to do is standardize my process of exit. It's still the core work I need to finish. That's how I start this course. Then that should be my focus. And then next module will be the standard pattern to exit to enter. That is kata challenge. I need to do the kata challenge. That's my action plan for next 2 weeks, or maybe next week, 2 weeks. I hope.
Ken.
Hi everyone, and it's now Jeff. Good to see that you're back in good health again. Yeah. So on the my word, a recap of the word, and Ken, what you said today, your introduction about the word is quite interesting because I actually didn't plan on or didn't think I would have anything to say about my word, which was helicopter from last week's lesson. But anyway, as these things go, there are some things to say. So, of course, firstly, so it's I was thinking, helicopter was to remind me of an idea whose time hasn't come, and the reverse side is the saying that the power of an idea whose time has come. There's a bit of research into that just to show that actually it was a quote by Victor Hugo. That was it really. There's not much more depth into that, but I thought it was interesting, an idea whose time has come. Then another association was helicopter money. We haven't been hearing a lot about that for a while, but the Fed is very serious in fighting inflation with rates, and something one of my friends, if you like, shared with me this week was the 3-month 10-year yield curve inversion. Apparently, that's the most inverted it's been probably ever. And what that normally signals is, he says, the coming recession will be a monster recession. And yet, it's kind of interesting that whenever Powell or the other Fed members speak, they're so serious about fighting inflation, raising rates, and I personally don't know what is the monster they're actually so afraid of. Anyway, so that's just a bit of a sharing. And of course, the helicopters take off vertically, and I just hope that that's how my year is gonna go, and hope how your year is gonna go this year after last year. Right. So on to the lesson. It's a bit like this lesson is a bit like life imitating art, if that phrase, or the course imitating life, or life imitating the course. But anyway, so some notes from it. Throttle control. Start slow and elevate pressure. It's really been full throttle week for me. And I went, it was all in, and that was one of my words from a previous lesson. It's kind of interesting how these things kind of keep going in cycles, the same themes re-emerge all the time. And we'll share more about that in a minute. And the other kind of lesson I got out of this lesson is the emphasis on to develop your ability, develop this ability. The only way to develop this ability to cope with pressure is through practice. How this course keeps telling us that we need to train, and we can develop, and we need to develop. So that is kind of encouraging, because you can train to do these things. And lastly, again, it's like train yourself. The sentence here is so to maximize your adaptive intelligence, practice managing pressure. Put yourself in situations with elevated stakes. So moving on to I didn't do exercise one because I had a kind of span of control for my week. But actually, it's interesting because when you were talking earlier, I kind of ideas jumped into my head. I couldn't even think of anything this way. I didn't have time. But but now sitting here in this true storytelling circle, I kind of remembered like my son's trapped elevator experience, which I shared a few weeks ago or months ago. I don't know. So I could use that. So I'll probably be doing that after this lesson or another time. So going to exercise 2. So what the real life application here for me is actually I was working on the presentation for Kent for the what was it called? Work in progress research weekend. I made the mistake of asking Ken, do you still need this? And he said yes. I was hoping that he might say no. I said okay, but hey, it's fast testing the multiples, right? If it's a no, then I don't have to spend any time on it. So so he said yes, and I've been working on that. And I know Chen Long shared. I mean, he's done a great job with his last one, but I think a few weeks before that, he had shared that he couldn't finish his first version. And man, now I really appreciate it. Not only do I appreciate what he meant, I've actually lived it. It was so tough because you get all these ideas, and you write it all down, and there's this shapeless, chaotic form, and you think, what am I gonna do with all this? So anyway, so that's took up most of my week actually. So, and I started, I don't know, Tuesday or Wednesday or something, and every day I did something on it. I took up most of my the time, the 2 to 4 hours when I would normally be prepping for the training day and other things. So it's actually taken up a lot. And I went back. I looked at some of what people. I looked at Chen Long's his presentation. I looked at Ken Ham's presentation, and then managed to go through some of Griff's. I think these are all posted on Foundations and probably other places. And what I saw was that wow, these guys' presentations are all rich and dense, and mine is the less is more approach, right? and maybe it's even less is less. You might not actually get anything. So it's a, it's really a TED type talk presentation in the minimalist sense. In that way, visually, I think that it's working. Content wise, I'll have to let you or Ken be the judge when I actually send a draft out. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, that's full throttle for me all in this week. And every day it's like, come on, I'm sure I must be making some headway here. Must be the light I must be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and the tunnel just keeps curving and curving. I'm getting there now. I think there is a hint of light. I even had a dream about it. I mean, to that extent, right? And it was not like a pleasant dream. It was actually like an anxiety dream. I dreamt that me and my family got in like a Uber taxi, and like halfway, the Uber driver said, "Okay, I'll drop you here." I said, "But this is not the destination. Why are you dropping me here? Carry on, please, carry on." And so he went, and then he didn't he got 3/4 of the way and insisted he was going to drop us off there and then. And we said, "Okay, we'll get out. We'll find something." Then and then he said, "How much are you going to pay me?" I was like, "Hang on, isn't that all done on the app?" He said, "No, that was just the tax." So then he really said, "This is like a dodgy, Middle Eastern or something, Egyptian kind of place where you have to negotiate every single time." So anyway, so I was like, "I'll give you £50," and he said, "No, it's £300." It was like that argument and everything. It was just ridiculous. So anyway, I'll cut it short there, so spare you the thing. But anyway, I finally woke up and reality was quite nice. So that's the thing. Yep. So that was my project, and and on the traders exercise, I had a quick. I just did it quite quickly. I actually didn't. I did it this morning. After working on my presentation again, I actually don't know what P1 means here or the trade frame, but I could work out. I was really happy to see that I could understand most of the other things on it, and I could probably put my own spin on it. So that I think that's a measure of what I've learned, since starting the course, and also this is in my presentation, the power of standard, as I called it, like standard work, standard terms, standard patterns. I'm not going to give it all away here, but I think that's a power, because standard terms helps really clear communication and both on the one talking and the receiver will receive it in exactly the same way that it's supposed to be understood. So anyway, so now I understand like entry price zone. That looks to me like your MMRB, your risk box. So that's that. And then there's the time zone, which I have also learned along the way. I think that's really useful, because you can put a time stop on your trade. If it's doing nothing for too long, you don't want to tie up your attention or your capital on that. So I interpret the time zone that way. And the objective price target here looks to me like 2R, and that then is where the 2R battle drill will kick in. And I suppose something that kind of rolls up from that is that it depends on the risk box you are using. Then your 2R will be different. And if you're the type to like just automatically put a second position in, then obviously it would depend on what risk box size you are using. And it kind of occurred to me that that you can so I think it was Ken's brother who put in a trade. It was Cliff. I think it must be Cliff early on in the week where everybody did really well. I think he posted his. It was like 19R or something, and I compared it to mine. which was something like, I don't know, 3R or something like that. But I realized that he uses a different size wrist box. And I was wondering if you actually standardize the measure of R, like a R per tick, if there's such a thing, or is there even such a standardized measure, whether it's comparable? Because you could end up, if you put in the same, maybe not, I was going to say your dollar amount is the same, you might end up in a similar amount. Sorry, that's garbled. But anyway, just kind of train of thought there. And okay, moving on then, between kind of the -1R or 0 and 1R, or even the target, I'd call that what, the tactical space, where the thing might not have taken off yet, and it could still come back and reverse. So that's what I got out of that diagram. And yeah, and also I think last thing to say is Ken, your introduction would be very useful for my presentation today. So maybe I could incorporate that into it for my true storytelling part of it. So aho.
So no.
Did you want to go, Tom? Did you want to go next, Tom?
No, it's fine. It's okay. You could go.
Okay, thank you.
I'm
That was me saying go next.
okay.
Okay, I'll give it a shot.
That was the Susie card, just coming your way. It's been rejected, so now she has to do it.
Okie dokie. So, my God, you guys, really, it's so much information in just a few of you that have shared. You've triggered a lot. So I'm going to be looking at my book rather than at you guys to see if I can pick up some of the stuff that I'm reacting to. First thing, I wasn't here last week, so I didn't have a word, but I do have a phrase which I'm embracing for this year for all of us, and that is best year yet. Or springboard, if you want it as one word or a phrase, but me, it's our best year yet. We're building on last year, and I am really genuinely excited for this year. I can't tell you. Maybe it's because I had a couple of weeks away from screens and then my brain has rested. I've had so many ideas. Kuhn, you talked about dreaming. You've triggered in my mind a Netflix series called Jiro, Dreams of Sushi. I talk about this guy a lot. He is the epitome in sushi as to what I believe we are in trading. I recommend, if you guys have access to it, Jiro is Jiro. He's a master sushi maker. He has an ego the size of a peanut, but his skills are phenomenal. I mean, hats off. So that's as much as I will say about him. And I'm a veggie. I don't eat sushi. So that's something. In terms of this exercise, that things that came to mind as I was reading it was things about all things high performance mindset. You will have picked up are areas that I'm really interested in when it comes to mind and psychology and whatever craft we're working on. How do we remain in the optimal space of not only performance but self-management? And when we face challenges, how do we deal with them? How do we disassociate? How do we recover and move forward? I've always studied it. I'm fast forwarding it this year, but what this brought to mind was a story that I recall Paul Tudor Jones talking about, and I had to go do a little bit of study. So Paul Tudor Jones learned from a commodities trader called Eli Tulis. I think he was big in cotton in the 70s. He was a Southern gentleman from New Orleans and a great trader.
New Orleans.
New Orleans. And he was, he traded big positions. And there was one story that Paul Tudor Jones recalled, and this relates to an area in this, I'm pointing over here because this is where we've got our lesson, but there's a phrase in here which says, why effective commanders can often seem eerily detached or cheerfully tranquil under fire. So this guy, Eli, or is it Eli? But I'm going to call him Eli. He was in a cotton position that was really going badly against him and his firm. It was unfolding in an awful way. And so he's got his team behind the scenes trying to manage the situation. And a couple of ladies decide to pop in to the office and pay a visit. And these ladies are wives of some of his investors. So what Eli decides to do while he's under the cosh in a big way is, being a Southern gentleman, is step out of the office and spend some time with these guests. And he's completely hospitable. He's lovely. He takes time. He's gentle. He's humorous. He laughs. They haven't got a clue about what's unfolding behind the scenes. Paul Tudor Jones, as I'm recalling from his story, the sheer panic and how flabbergasted he was at his manager. Like, how on earth can you stay so calm when all hell is breaking loose? We're losing our shirts. Now, what part of this, I wonder, and I'm invoking Tom Hardison here and your curiosity, my curiosity is, like, what kind of mind does it take to be so calm and so polite and so well-mannered? And, if heart rate monitors were a thing, then would we have even seen a blip on the graph? And it appears from my storytelling that Eli remained of an even keel and temperament whilst he was receiving these unexpected guests at the most inopportune time. So, like, at what point is it ostrich head in the sand and ignoring that this, shit's real? And what part of it is just incredible compartmentalization and professionalism and remembering to be human? Now, I don't know how that specific story turned out, but he didn't go bust, and he didn't lose his shirt, and he continued to invest until he retired. Which brings me to, well, if this was a chap that we studied and we've known of, and we, Paul Tudor Jones, infamous, well, then I bring it to traders that we've actually, both Jeff and I have actually worked with, where we have seen similar characteristics. So there's two things that invoke in my mind. The first one is, again, that same phrase of being detached and cheerful and relaxed and playful. So there's a chap that we know is a really big position trader, eye-wateringly big positions, super relaxed, very friendly. His team, not so relaxed, really competent, really sharp. And so we would talk with him and we would talk with his team, and we would get a really good insight about how emotions, and despite having like a trading plan and risk management and all of that said, how emotions like wavered in the same kind of cohort. And so the more relaxed he became, it's almost like he just like eased even more as they got more stressed. And I'll give you an example. So he puts on a position that his team are managing with him, and they want to stay there and control the screens, and he decides it would be a good idea to go away and get a massage. So the more he gets massaged, and this is all real, man, the more he gets massaged, the more knots this one particular individual who's retelling me the story is getting in his shoulders. He just can't take it. Similarly, he would also get onto a plane for a long haul flight. And in his mind, the guy himself would retell me, I remember him telling me, he'd be like, right, okay, well, positions are in, stops are in, nothing much I can do. Yeah, okay, I can like, you know, get onto Wi-Fi using the plane's system and stuff, but screw it, I'm on the plane, I'll just enjoy the ride. And when he got off the plane the other side, his trades typically were phenomenally successful. And so he'd laugh, and there's more reinforcement about the more relaxed I am, the more I trust my system, and you know, happy days. So then we take it the other side, and, you know, of course, Jeff and I would be like, really, is this just a great system, or is this just great coping mechanisms? Or is it an ostrich head in sand? One will never know. You know, you play with these ideas. So then you take the same individual, and in this, in our exercise, it goes on to talk about commanders, the very same individuals who have the ability to transition suddenly into an adrenaline speed, which fuels our strategic imagination and get kickstarted and so on. So this position trading long-term guy, I want to say it was 2018, don't quote me, but equity markets were in a swift decline. This is right, yeah? Mm-hmm. I want to say ES, but I'm not going to hang my hat on it. And what he did with his team was he adapted from long-term trading to aggressive bear market intraday strategies, executing on 5 minute from a position trader, 5 minute charts, getting into the flow, taking his position, adding out, ruthless, rinse, repeat. There was none of this get on and still have the mentality of positions, you know, position trading and being short and expecting the trade to behave the same way it might if, you know, if he was doing his normal thing. He just adapted. And that was dizzying for his team because they came back and told us all about it. So, you know, here we have somebody that we sort of studied, Eli Tulis, and then you got this guy that we've worked with and witnessed, both in position and in, you know, intraday opportunism, my language. And then you get me. Then you get me and my trading. So if I think about that diagram that Ken put up, and if I can pull that up. My reaction to Jeff when I looked at it was, I can talk about this all day long. I can talk about that diagram all day long. I feel like I've been looking at this framework for years. Thank you, Ken. And so first I'm like, well, before I delve in, why don't I take like Kuhn's phrase, why don't I take a helicopter view and see what jumps out at me, which isn't my standard routine practice. And one thing that jumped out, which I thought was important to say, was trade frame. So trade frame, having an expectation of the trade. So when we're getting in, where do we reasonably expect this trade to go, a trade frame? That doesn't mean, in my mind, that that's where it stops. It doesn't mean it's going to get there, and it doesn't mean that it's not going to blow through. But to have a structure gives, you know, we talk about, it gives scaffolding. It gives an idea of what to expect. Then trade expectation leads on, in my mind, to the time one expects the trade to unfold. So Kuhn touched on it when you talked about timing out, but I also look at it in terms of what's once in a trade. How long typically does it take for this kind of trade to reach target, if it's going to reach target? So you can do it in time, or you can do it in number of bars, depending on what time frame we're executing on. The other thing I see when I look at this from a helicopter view is a descending resistance line, which Ken has called trade quality raid. So like the TQN or the degradation of time on your trade. But what I see is, if you recall, I talked about the different ways that I look at my intradays. Some of my charts have the RLCO framework, and some of them are clean, plain charts. And you'll recall that we trade with Eric, who's a scalper. So everything within that resistance line from the base and up is where you see Eric engaging. And in the early days where I was holding on for a breakthrough. And everything that goes beyond it is where I would get in and start to treat that TQG line as my own 2R battle dream. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. I might have gone off on one. So let me just think back. In terms of this context, we talked about what kind of mind do you need to be able to trade this. So both Tom and Kuhn have talked about, and Chun-Long actually, have talked about non-attachment, no expectation, unbiased, non-judgmental. So if I go back to the days where I first learned about the P1, when I was entering and taking the P1 trade, I had no expectation of where that trade would go. In fact, only after a lot of study did I learn that actually the P1 fails more than it works. That was something I might have heard Ken say, but I didn't have that belief. And not having that belief allowed me to explore the P1 freely. And so to go in without any expectation, I started developing like an attitude of absolute expectation. Oh, sorry, an absolute non-expectation. How can I phrase this better? An absolute expectation that this is unlikely to work, but it's okay. So there was this thing that I was working on, which was, this also works around the opening range trades for me. It doesn't have to be a P1, but I want to get going. I want to get going small. I want to get into action. So this, can I go back up one? Mm-hmm. I'm aware that this is not as clear as it could be, so I'm going to make it clear. In high pressure environments, your creative engine struggles. So you're either going to go to fight or flight or act now. It's either going to be green lights with an existing strategy or hasty orders and retreat. So at the open with liquidity, for me, it's green lights go. With a P1, it's green lights go. It's just the mechanical thing that I can get into with small size to get over it and go. What I learned with the hunter-farmer exercise, which I talked about a few weeks ago, was, well, if we have a mechanical system, which I found to be positively expectant in results, regardless of all the wisdom that P1s don't really work, for my test period, they worked. So I was able to then take profit and then allow a small element of creativity to exist. So for my creativity, in contrast to all the creativity should happen before you take a trade, mine became, I'm alive, I'm observant, I'm in the moment, I'm making observations. Can I record what I'm seeing, feeling, hearing in an orderly way so that I can then take it away and do something with that information? So what I would find was, with the extra little piece that I would leave on, is there a system that I can create to deal with the P1s that fail, like a stop and reverse? Is there, if my trade doesn't reach Z2, how far does it come back against me, and how often does it come back against me, and how long does it consolidate before it goes again, and do I go again? So that's another type of system. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm going off on one.
No, it's okay. And what you talked about before, sorry, I'm jumping in. I was
sorry.
jump in. was, by the hunter taking a piece that enabled the creativity to exist because it took pressure off that little bit.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah, because you've got the mechanical thing going, so you've still got an element that's able to think, but you're behaving professionally. And you're not all in on a position. The thing that your system that you've accepted within yourself as being a system you're going to execute, you can execute, and the rest of it becomes information with which you can do things. With a P1 to Z2 as a frame, that actually became a frame that I use as what Ken would call professional money. This is the professional trade. This is it. You get in, and the P1, I think one of you guys said we didn't know what a P1 was. So that's when price and the RL10 as a representative of price comes out of the river, and the RL30 is also out of the river. So that's the minus Z1 area. And the RL10 crosses back through the RL30. And at that juncture, that is a P1. It's an RLCO, it's an RL regression crossover outside of the river. And the objective is to get an entry before price enters the river. At worst, dead on the river. So the conversations we may have had, I'm not sure, Ernie, what you saw. By all means, ping me if you're not sick of hearing my voice afterwards. But the conversations were always: do you front run a P1? Do you enter as a universal entry? Do you enter on a smaller time frame? And I would play with maybe looking at a P1 on a 3 minutes, but taking a 1 minute entry. I would do all kinds of things to just get a little bit more buffer to be able to get to no lose quickly. May have gone off again in a different direction. But yeah, so the P1 is when you get the RLCO crossover, and the question is how far can price go? And what Ken would teach was, if a P1 is going to work, then it is not unreasonable for price to go to the other side of the river, if not the Z2. And that would be a 2R bank. So the 2R level then becomes, well, if this is working, and we've got no right to expect it to work, if it is working, what do you do next? And then he instilled a drill. And the drill is, well, what would you do? So it could be, is it place an order and be surprised into an entry? And if you are, how do you manage it? Or it might just be take the professional money and wait for the next re-entry. And I'm banging on about this because we don't talk so much about P1 and Z2. We do talk about Z3 a lot. And we're in the world of sniper now. And what I've observed, the little that I've observed, is that the trade expectation that we have these days, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, my observation is not that it stops at the end of the river or the Z2. The trade expectation on a sniper trade is as much as the market is willing to give us in the circumstances, which is great because now we're not cutting winners short. But in a sideways market, we may feel like we're giving too much back if it comes back on us, or we might feel chop, or whatever our emotions feel about the distance of the P-star, or whatever trailing mechanism it might be that we're following. The other thing I would say about this amazing picture, Ken, is that at the open, what I'd sometimes feel is, I would say, I think Kieran mentioned it as well, when you look at the RLCO framework on continuous data, you get a continuous flow of price and where the dragon and all the other indicators may be. And at the open, you get a view of trade location based on data that's continual. It's not like you're starting with just like a vertical line and then waiting for time to build. So I'm then able to say, wow, gap down. Gap down's just creating a P1. P1, how big was that gap? Are we going to get a gap fill? Is this worth my risk? Minimum manageable risk box. What is the likelihood of this P1 becoming greater than a Z2 because of gap? Now that's starting to inform how I am running my battle drill. And I'm also looking at where those opening RLCO frameworks sit against daily, weekly, monthly location. That makes sense. The other thing I would say is, in a sideways market, one of my favorite plays is if it's not P1, I'm actually turning that trade frame round and I'm trading off the Z2. So it's almost like a fake out, or one of your hooks can. And I guess another way of looking at it is Z3 to Z3 or Z2 to Z3 starts to become a channel or a range. And I watch for price to react to one of those areas. Just think my typical DAX morning trades. And I wait for the initial opening thrust and then take the reverse. And that turns often to be the direction of the day. And if I'm wrong, I've stopped and reversed. So I don't know if I've gone off in loads of different directions.
Let me violate the rules and just simply say what you just said I was going to say, and that is where the RL10 turns at the bottom and where the RL10 turns at the top, that's the width of your current channel statistically. And that has to be 4 MMRB in order to think about trading the channel. Because you got to give it 1 MMRB, and then you're going to give back 1 MMRB because of reasons. So that leaves you 2 in the middle to justify taking the risk of 1.
Yep.
So if you have 4 MMRBs, and if the MMRB is 1/10 of the range stat, you now have mathematical precision to say the channel trade, I must have reasons to believe that the channel is 40% of the range stat, which is about 1.5 frog boxes in our old school. So look how far we've come. We used to wait for a frog box and then enter. And now we're entering on a third of a frog box, aiming for 2 MMRBs in the middle that we want to capture, knowing that we're going to give 1 on the other end. So as you take a look at the peaks and bellies of the RL10 as it starts to compress, if it's at least 4 boxes wide, you can be a serious person and trading inside that from point to point, knowing that if it does break through this time, then yee-hoo, we're on to an enthusiastic breakout. A new channel is being formed because it didn't get contained.
Yep.
But if it's less than that, now you're thinking about, well, what I've got is an SQC. Is it narrow enough to trade it as a bracket breakout? No, it's still choppy. But when it gets narrowed down to about 2 MMRBs, now you can play the breakout from that in either direction. That's where that'll line up with Z3Ps and all that stuff too. So there is a really good discussion of that exact pattern from this weekend's podcast, where we describe that in one of the sniper trades of the day. I think it was Friday, where we realized that the trades we were taking early in the day was based on a 4 MMRB wide channel, and then the Kata 2 that came out of that, and then the thing went running, and then that was, I think, it was probably the CLF for U.S. Steel trade. I'm going to extract it out and put it in there. But I just want to say that little moment of clarity for me this weekend really was staggering. It was as important to me as the moment when I drew that control chart that was part of today's exercise, which I drew 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, that's one of the most important ones I've ever drawn. So that's what I want to say. I want you to recognize that the RL10, its turning point is always a sharp point because of math. It doesn't kind of ooze around like the dragon does. That RL10 point to point is the width of that is the statistical width of the channel, because we're saying that is the price, that is the statistically significant price point. So I want to connect. I interrupted so that I could connect that story to your story of discovering the P1F, and that is, once you release the belief that it was gonna work, you were free to research into what it actually does. And what it does is it reminds us that the power of the previous trend was down. And that has the real power. So the P1 was the first alert that tells us, hey, maybe this is the time that it reverses, but 2/3 of the time it doesn't. And so it's actually an alert to the upcoming collapsing dragon that's going to happen 2/3 of the time, which is the one we want. But when that SSC works, it's always so good that you want to take the trade. So that's why I say I love taking my second favorite pattern, because when it fails, I get my first favorite pattern. But if my second favorite pattern works, it keys me into that whole series of rising kata 2s, which can be 6 or 7 iterations of my third favorite pattern, which is actually now my second favorite pattern. And the SSC is simply just get in, for crying out loud. Get skin in the game and manage the damn trade under pressure. Add gas. Put a coal in the fire, engineer. Raise steam. Now drive the train. You got to raise steam to move a train. So that's what I wanted to interrupt there and say that.
That's okay.
Over.
I think the only thing I would add is you just reminded me, Ken, that some of those opening range trades that I love, that I stopped myself from taking, was it was ranges. I would see ranges and range breakouts and ranges, and I would find that provided the size was small and there was skin in the game, so enough pressure at a time to get involved when the market's active, would help me get out of hesitation into the dojo, start moving professionally according to my own rules. And if it's a hit, it's a hit, accept, let go, reset. What I found was, if I was fortunate enough to be correct, and some of these trades often came out of compressed states because it was at the open, Asia's generally quiet, then I'm in that state of having to very quickly manage a trade that's starting to work. So then I started using some of Ken's principles of, geez, well, how far did this go? Well, it just moved a hybrid frog. Well, now it's moved a frog box. Good God, it's now 1.5 times a frog box. And this was just an opening range trade I had no business being in. Vice versa, if it didn't work and it was a stop and reverse, I'd get the similar thing. So that would be pressure, and then a creativity of how I'm going to manage this thing, and then learning to actually control myself from going at this again and again on days of chop. Because you have to, you realize very quickly that not every day is a directional day from the off. And so that was that. So anyway, a very interesting exercise. Ernie, I don't know if that even touched the size of whatever it was you were looking for. But Susie's out. Mic dropped.
Yeah. Hey, I want you to draw a sketch of a pressure cooker. Okay? And I want you to think about the importance of the pressure release valve. So you just realized in the front end that if you're going to cook in a serious way, you're cooking it in a pressure cooker, which means that you got to put skin in the game, you got to raise the fire, and you got to raise the pressure so it can cook. And you just realize, okay, that's what I just got to do. When your hunter takes a piece off, that's like carving a little piece off, and now I can feed myself and the tribe to keep going. Now I'm not so hungry that I'm agitated and worried. I'm satisfied just enough. Now I can disinterestedly cook the rest of the meat. Now the function of the pressure release valve is how you deal with the stress of overheating and exploding. And now what do? You just say, look, I've got a certain level of parameters that this pressure cooker can handle. On a train, it's the engineer with his boiler and watching the steam valve, how much pressure and where's the red line, and as long as he keeps it between the lines, he's raising enough steam to be able to drive the train routinely. If it gets to be too much, he just lets off a little steam. Done. Back in parameters, and now he's within operating tolerance. That's an engineer solution to the simultaneous challenge of I've got to raise steam to do work, and I've got to not have so much steam that I blow up. So my boiler has a certain capacity and an engineering tolerance for how much pressure. You just got to know what that is so that your engine can work routinely. To the engineer on the train, that's just what he does. To the little kids on the side of the thing, go, ooh, it's fire and steam and heat and noise and ooh, dude, it's just an industrial application. I got a coal tender with add some coal. Oh, too much? Take off a little steam. Got to come into the station and take on some water. That's what you did with your 2-week vacation there, was taking on water and performing maintenance on the engine. And now you're ready to, the engine wants to work. So I want you to see that as a continuous system of raising pressure and letting off, raising steam and letting off steam. It's just the water cycle. Hey, what's the water cycle? Oh, the water cycle is all that stuff outside that, which is rain on the top of the hill coming down to the river, driving the wheel, turning the mill, filling the cistern. And at those little train stations, they got those great big water cisterns to add water to the train so that he can continue to haul from point to point. So I want you to draw a picture of that pressure cooker and just really appreciate the pressure release valve. If you design the valve correctly, it doesn't matter if the gauge is correct or not. The little needle on how much pressure do I have in there or whatnot. When you design the valve correctly, it has a little weight inside a cylinder, and if the pressure is so great that it pushes the ball up, it breaks the seal and the pressure is released until there's just enough pressure to no longer hold the ball up, and it drops back down. So it's a self-regulating system that you learn to trust. Now, you can monitor the gauge with the little, it's going into the red line. What am I going to do? I have to manually push the button to release the steam? No, you just design the pressure release valve so that the stress de-stresses itself. You got to figure out what does that mean inside your system so that you can stay in the comfort zone longer. That's how you smooth out all those little jagged edges of fear. You learn how to run the engine, with automatic stops, the automatic pressure release valve. It's like when I walk with the dog, when she's cold and tired, wants to go back in, I gear my routes so that I know how long she takes to be done with this walk, and so I am close to passing back by the house at her normal stop point. If she's feeling, I almost said froggy or doggy, it wants to take another lap, we'll take another lap on a different little walking track. So it's like the best walking path for me is the cloverleaf, so I can add positions. When I'm walking by myself, I have short, medium, and long loops, and I can make that decision at the Z2. At the 2R moment, how do I feel? No, this is a 5,000 step walk. Okay. No, it's a 10,000. No, it's a 15. So you design your pathways, and that's the same way that your trading framework allows you now to process where you are in the trade as a function of those landmarks. So, a picture of the pressure release valve on a pressure cooker.
Okay.
We were going to suggest letting Dan go if we can, because
Yes,
he's
Dan. He's
texting
been
saying
patient.
yeah, sorry, Tom. I know
Sorry.
It's not a matter of patience. It's more just that we have company coming at 2, and I got to have lunch, and then still probably some cleaning to do. See what my wife's managed to accomplish. But anyway, I'll be quick. I didn't have a whole lot. And Tom, I'm sorry about jumping in ahead of you. Let's see my notes here. So yeah, I really like this dynamic of creativity thriving on challenge, but choking on too much pressure. And loved your boiler analogy, Ken, and also so now the way you kind of get into trades, knowing that there's a risk, a greater than 50% risk it won't work, but also knowing that you'll make it back in the long run based on the odds of winners versus losers. So that's all applications, I guess, of this dynamic, kind of how we create artificial challenges for ourselves. We create deadlines. I think one of the exercises had an example of kind of telling your boss you'll have a presentation done before you've even hardly finished the outline. And I've done that enough times during my career. And I sort of do that now with my to-do list, my daily planning system. I'll put some things in there, and then I probably won't be able to quite finish it during the day or even during the week, but having it on my list makes me think about it. It may make me spend even 5 minutes or 20 minutes on it, and maybe I'll get a breakthrough, or maybe I'll get a significant level of initial progress. Now, when it comes to putting ourselves in an unpredictable market, we just have to go into the market and put ourselves in an unpredictable environment. We just have to put ourselves in the market. And we have to be able, as we've said in these presentations, we have to be able to disassociate, to be able to return to a resourceful state after our inevitable reverses and losses and so forth. I had a good example of that on Thursday. I took a trade in Rivian. It was a turbo trade. I was trying to get into a swing trade to catch the elevator down on that name. And because it was on the 3-minute chart soon after the gap, one expects volatility there. And I had the usual R10 minimum risk box, and I was expecting volatility. And sure enough, on that first bar, price moves down almost to 1R, almost 1 MMRB. And this is the point where I'm telling myself, now's when I need to take no lose plus dinner for 2, because I've got the fireman in the seat here. And I didn't, because another part of me was telling myself, well, let's just wait for this bar to close, and then I'll have a bar high, and I can put the stop over that, and it'll have a better chance of holding. Of course, once you know it, the next bar comes all the way up and takes out my stop. And I actually swore because I was mad. At that point, I had to disassociate somehow in order to get back to a zero state, to a resourceful state, where I could continue my trading session. And the way I did it was I said, okay, I'm only risking $20. That's kind of the challenge I've set for myself. Last fall, I started with 1 share after paper trading and sim trading on TradeStation. I started with 1 share, then I did $10, and I did $20. So now I just lost $20. Well, maybe 22 because there was slippage. That's okay. It's worth it because I just learned that if I'm trading near the gap like this at the open, I've got to take that no lose plus dinner for 2 as soon as it's on the table, because it's volatile at this time of the day with this type of situation. And I've got to be ready to take that, even though I'm highly likely to get stopped out at that no lose dinner for 2 before the trade's even done what I want, and that it may then go on and do what I want, which was to go down. That's why we have the universal reentry that can occur after the no lose plus dinner for 2 exit is taken. So that's kind of like a lightning version of the trader exercise, I guess, because I think a lot of the things I discussed, thinking about the re-entry zone and thinking about the exit zones, and the need to have your rules to be able to take those actions automatically in these situations that just will repeat over and over and over again. That's what need to be able to do, and need to be able to disassociate when you have your loss. I found a way to disassociate, but I don't always want it to be, okay, well, I lost, but I learned, so that's okay. I like it better that I would be disassociating by having framed the trade in both directions, the way Ken is urging us to do, and the way he urged me to do last night when we were going over the swing trade frames. And so I'm going to take that on as my next assignment. Aho.
Yeah, it's interesting to note that those comments were a direct result of having gone through this creativity lesson, and disassociation was on my mind. So. Dan, you've been so patient, and Tom, you've been so patient. We just insist. It's your turn.
Bye, everyone.
See you, Dan.
Hi, Dan. It must be my turn because my hands are cool and my stress level's up. So, wow, there's so much in this that everybody's talking about. It's really amazing. One of the things I want to just review real quickly, I think it was the lesson last week or the week before about the sniper. And it asked about the sniper and do you trust the sniper? So I had to look, I thought about it, and then I looked up the sniper system. And the sniper system, yeah, I mean, I read back over it. I mean, it had 4 fundamentals, which is a steady position, sight picture, breath control, and trigger squeeze. And then I'm just going to move right through this. And then there were principles. plan, prepare, execute, assess on every trade to survive and to strive in challenging environments. The plan, your plan is, you scan the market, you find your candidates, you prepare, you develop your trade frames, you identify your entries, execute, trade by the rules every time, assess, analyze your trades, process, and results, and identify areas to sustain and improve. You have the trader's mind: calm, prepared, alert, balanced, adaptive, disciplined, systematic. The four things to have a trade: time, will, and money. Pattern. And then you go into will, pattern, money. You have to have the money. Your philosophy is the market. You trade in large population like the S&P 500. We have our different targets, our good trading targets like EWZ, DIA, X, Cliff. You have standard setups, your framework, overbought, Humpty Dumpty, all your different standard patterns, your SSC, your CD, your WMD3, your sniper reversal, then the process. So when I go over this and ask me again, I ask myself again, do I trust the sniper? I mean, it's been researched and back tested, and the answer to me is yes, definitely. So the question I ask myself then, why? I am trading it, but not at a professional level, which is another a worksheet I came across, and it was about I can't find it right now, but it asked questions like how do you feel about your professional? And right away I look at I still work, so look at driving a truck, and then your personal, and I'm like thinking to myself, where's my trading? If I want to be a trader, then this should be answering my questions as a professional. So I answered them and I said, no, I'm not satisfied with my professionalism as a trader. If I don't want to trade and make money for a living, then that belongs in my personal, maybe hobbies. So I had to do some, that really was like an aha moment for me. And so it brought me into, do you know what you have to do to make this work for you? I mean, because trading as a professional, and I have tested certain ways I can make it work before I retire. I mean, trading at work, I use a couple different apps like Thinkorswim or Schwab, but Schwab won't let me. On their app on the phone, I cannot. I can't put in trailing stops, but on my Thinkorswim I can. So, but on my Thinkorswim I don't have enough money in it for day trading. So it's simple. I'm thinking to myself, well, then just transfer the money in, so you'd have you 25,000 in there, so you could make your day trades, 10 trades or whatever you're gonna do. So that was kind of like an aha moment in the last, I want to say maybe today, Dave, a couple of days since I was really reviewing some of these approaches to the market and where I want to be at. As we were talking, I walk the dogs too in the morning. I think I kind of, it's kind of like my dogs want to take me on Z3 and 3-4 excursions, and I want to stay about the Z1. So I'm on like the opposite of Ken. So I went about Z2 today. But one of the things with the dogs, and I'll bring this back into myself in a minute. But I mean, I used to listen to the Dog Whisperer and other things about training dogs. And one of the things he would say is like dogs really live in the present. They don't. That's why they're loyal. I mean, people could be mean to dogs and stuff, but you know they always come greet you at the door when you get back home. And they don't. Well, at least I don't know for sure, but not really hold grudges against the master or something. Maybe there's some kind of memories. I'm sure there's memories there. They are mammals. But as far as trading goes, and I really think of thinking more when we say disassociation from your trade. I think more like be timeless, the timelessness of the trade. And what I mean by that is every trade is new, it's different. They're not the same. So when you're entering, I mean, what's holding you back? Is it a bad experience, future fear? You got to find that timelessness where you just accept how it is now and be willing to enter the trade with your minimum amount of risk box or whatever method you use and make the trade. If you're going to Z2 and you trade in a moment, I mean, I have been in, actually I've traded in 3 minutes, and actually I'm looking at a 10-minute chart and it takes me a while, and then I'm like, why is this levels not coming up right? And then I realize it's my mistake that I'm doing. But I'm protected because of my stop. I usually don't enter without some protection. But as timelessly, I mean, yeah, you might lose, but in the bigger picture, in that type of state, I mean, where are you putting your trust? I mean, you got to trust. If you trust your system, I mean, we have the sniper. It's actually tested. I mean, we see it on the nightly podcasts. I mean, people are doing very well with it. And so if you don't trust, do you trust the system? If you trust the system, then do you trust yourself? Do you trust your purpose in life, or where's your balance? And so I came to realize, yeah, I trust the systems, and the trust is missing. It has to be in myself. Either I'm reflecting on past or future, so to clear that and just press and really focus on the present moment and where I'm at, know my targets, and really be in that type of Zeno state, we could call it, or zero state during your trades. And of course, yeah, we learn from our experiences, but each experience is unique in itself. So that's where I wanted to go with that. As far as this trading approach or the trading lesson, I was looking at it and with the doji and the entry price, the P1. I did look up again. You know, the RLCO outside the river, which is earlier than the P-star flip usually. But I have tried that, and sometimes you get in earlier than other times sometimes, but yeah, it has a good reward risk ratio. So then your Z2, I think in the earlier trading systems, I don't know, I was going through one of Ken's book. At one time it was like, which I have tried also, to once you're beyond Z2, you don't want it to come back below. I worked with that too. And then at the Z3 excursions, which are usually unique in themselves. Sometimes I think in earlier systems, you didn't want to give back too much after a Z3 excursion. This goes on in the chart to, you have to have usually you could preset stop order entry into your R2 battle drill, and then your range stat move, which is high today. Something like Cliff. I mean, I have tried. I mean, that was a good. I think Ken was talking about Cliff earlier, because it had a big move on Thursday. I tried to enter at the end of that day into a call position. That's an overnight risk or a 1 day risk, but it didn't fill. But the next day it did make a good move up over 18, so it would have been a good trade. But I think that's really important, and just clear out all the noise I got from the past and live in the present moment. You know, I have trust in the future. And the trading system. So all I got to do is transfer a little more money into that account, and I'll be using that. Probably could do TradingView too, but I haven't looked into it. But they'll may be able to trade with that system. I hope.
Yeah, I want to point out in the heat of the moment there, the importance of your confidence in driving a truck and knowing exactly what professionalism means to you is a strength that most people don't have. Most people do not have a direct experience of a justified feeling of professionalism in their own life. Most people dabble at everything. That's why Facebook is so addictive. But you know something about professionalism from driving a truck. You can take a look at a space between two other trailers and the space around, and you know exactly if you can put that trailer between the other two. It's not even a question. It's just, you can look at it and say, yep, nope. So you have an inner guide that understands what your criteria of trusting in professionalism means exactly for you. That inner guide is also watching what you're doing with the trading as you're learning to acquire the skills of trading the same way you learn to acquire the skills of driving the truck. And you are on the pathway to learn those different things. And today is sort of an acknowledgement that, look, there's no shortcut to acquiring that professionalism, because otherwise your inner guide is telling you, nope. Until your inner guide is satisfied that you've done the professional things to acquire the skill, then and only then will you have the confidence of knowing exactly that same feeling. But you already know how to do that. You know 100% of what it's going to take to do that, and now you want to approach that in the same way that you learned to spot a truck when you're backing up. You don't put a high dollar value time pressured load on the first time you're backing in. No, you just do what you got to do to go through and acquiring those muscle memories. So bring that same mentality. So that's not a thing to despair about or worry about or to add pressure to you. That's actually a pressure relief button that lets you remember that you already know exactly everything you have to do. Now you got to do it, but you can eliminate all of the, well, gee, I wonder if I'm ever going to, shut up. You already know. And when your inner guide is satisfied that you've done the work to what you already know is a professional standard for you, you'll be able to bring the same confidence into driving it exactly the way you want to. Now, as a truck driver, do you have to drive every truck? Do you have to take every load? Do you have to ride it? Can you find some way to harmonize the truck driving of your professional life into your personal life? Yeah. Look around. Your infrastructure says yes. So now it's simply, not simple, of course nothing's simple, but it's the simple matter of right-sizing the system with the correct parameters that allow you to operate that in the professional space you've decided that you want to spend on the trading. Maybe that's the 3-day, 9-day system that I briefed last night that my brother Bill and Bob Rourke, Trader X, are working on, which is sniper trading, but at a much longer rate of time. And that also allows you, by the way, to have a lot more open positions that are uncorrelated. But you can trade that exactly professionally. To trade that is not to say, well, I'm not going to be professional. I'm just going to trade this other one because that's what my time frame. No. You're still going to trade it professionally to the satisfaction of your inner guide. It just means that that's the right time frame that fits your circumstances. That's all that means. But I just want you to recognize the importance of knowing something that 999 people out of 1,000 that are trading don't know. They do not know from personal experience what it means to be professional. Now, when you're a sniper looking at something in a compound critical state, that thing has multiple time frames where people are nervous in the service about which way is it going to go, I don't know, and they are all 100% agitated. Well, you know exactly what that feels like. You know exactly how the target feels when it is the object of hunters. But you also know exactly how all those other hunters from all those other different time frames feel as they're trying to approach through their little lens to wonder, is this the one that's going to work? And they're all nervous in the service. None of those guys are snipers. You're looking at the same trade, but you're also you're not even looking at the target, really. You're looking at the psychology of all the other hunters on both sides of the trades that are running around at maximum state of urgency and emergency. And there's a reason why those two words rhyme. Urgency creates the emergency, which makes those guys lose their mind and jump further and faster and farther and become overcome by their emotions because they don't have a pressure cooker with a pressure release valve and a steam valve and an engineer who's running this thing as a professional. That's the difference in that whole system. For every 1,000 traders, there's one sniper. In the Army, in a battalion, in an infantry battalion of 1,000 combat infantrymen, there's one sniper. And that's all I need is one sniper per battalion to make the huge difference. So I want you to remember that when you have framed out your trade and got your solutions and you're looking at that compound critical state from the target list and you've worked it out left and right, you also know exactly how all of the other traders who are gathered around there who see the trade, but they don't see you. They can't even imagine you and what you know. Or if they can imagine it, they don't even know what it takes to become professional in the management of those emotions and mental skills and physical traits. That's what it means to be a professional sniper. And you know what it feels like to be professional. And you know what it took for you to become professional in truck driving. Me too. I got 100,000 miles of accident-free driving in Army trucks. I've got 10 driver's badges, so I know exactly what that feels like. I can look at a space, I can back a truck up into there, or I can't. Done. That doesn't mean I'm a good person or a bad person. It's just I can spot that trailer or I cannot. I got to find another place to park it. That's all. It's just a professional. And I've disassociated. Oh, there was a spot I couldn't put a trailer in. So what? It doesn't mean I'm not a driver. It just means I know what kind of a driver I actually am. And I know what I can do. And I'm not going to waste any time. Oh, well, I couldn't spot that trailer in that location. I guess I'm going to have to just change my entire life. Really? Really? No. So that's the mentality, by the way, of the sniper psychology. I want you to remember when you're looking at that trade frame and it's under tension because it's a compound critical state. Because all those other time dimensions where people are looking at just one time for that target, it's in a critical state for them. So all that agitation is in there. They don't see all of the other agitation of the other time frames because they only look at their time frame. Because we're looking at multiple time frames, we get a sense of the how close to an avalanche condition is that hill, and that the whole thing could just go in either direction. You know? And you could even make a decision, hey, I'm going to be a sniper trader and I'm only going to take the short side. Life is even simpler. Or I want to take it in either direction. You don't have to take it in either direction. You say, hey, I'm going to frame them out and I'm going to take it in the direction I want to take it in. If it breaks to the right, I'm all over it. If it breaks to the left, let it go. You know, that's what I want to say is I want you to recognize that it's not you and the target. It is you observing all of the other traders who are unprofessional, running amok in their minds and emotions, and you know exactly what that herd does when it gets spooked. Does the herd get spooked at every noise? No. Only when they get startled, when there is a sudden abnormal piece of volatility as the trigger. Oh, now it's... In the quiet of the night, it doesn't take as much noise to spook the herd as it does in the middle of the day when there's all that noise coming around. That's the width of the Bollinger Bands. So when all of the Bollinger Bands are compressed and the doji is tight and the RLs are all together, that's when the compound critical state is happening. It's either abnormally volatile right now, oh, it's already in play, easy, or it's abnormally quiet. When it breaks out, it's going to go. I just don't know when. So that's what I want you to remember about your inner guide and your own personal standard for what professionalism means. You and you alone know what that is, and the good news is you know exactly what it is. And nothing else will do. Because you know the consequences of trying to act professionally when you are not yet a professional. You know what the risk is for that. And your inner guide won't let you do that until it's satisfied that you've done the right things. So you just gotta embrace that as a strength, not as a source of anxiety. I hope. Jeff, I think we're waiting on you now. Huh? Resume control, Jeff.
All right, I'm the only guy left, right? So I'll run with it. Cool. Thanks, guys. I'll keep it short since I know we've been on for a long time. I already had to do my nature break. So also just quickly, I'm sorry about the camera on our end. I'm not sure what's going on there. I did some software upgrades on the, over the holidays, which seem to have made things worse. So we'll work on that. Okay, so quickly with this exercise, I loved it as I do many of them, but this one in particular kind of like hits me with, well, it defines the way that I behave and act very well, better than I'd ever sort of put into words. So, I often work best under pressure, but not too much pressure, too much and sort of deer in the headlights and then get a bit petrified and that sort of thing. But without that amount of pressure on, things can kind of meander and my, sort of magpie brain will find something else interesting to work on, and I may not complete something. So I'm aware, and me and Sonal talked about this quite a few times, that a deadline driven exercise, so having a deadline really kind of makes me focus and get things done. And so just the way that this exercise has been, or this lesson I should say, has been written really defines it really well for me. And not just having the deadline. I used to think, oh, I need a deadline in order to work, but no, I need a deadline that's somewhat reasonable. And the metaphor of the engine really kind of brought it home to me. And everything else with the pressure cooker and the steam engine, it's all a similar sort of idea. And so yeah, I've really kind of can go along with all of that. The trader's exercise, I'm not going to go on too much about this because I could talk about this for hours, and we already kind of have. But you know, Sonal did one of her Kansas Research Weekend papers on the P1 and on really kind of diving deep into both discretionary trading of the P1, and then we coded it up in TradeStation and did a bunch of back testing work on this as well, and doing various tests with regards to, you know, when, you know, are we looking at what are the various sort of profit target exits that we could deal with, and what do those end up looking like, and also, you know, you've got that sort of that degrading timeline, the trade quality grade, as Ken kind of puts it, and it's not necessarily this, but the way it unfolds isn't necessarily this, but the diagram does make you think that, you know, over time is almost like a lower likelihood of it maybe working out. Won't always be the case, but a lot of the times when these things do work, they work pretty quickly. Hence the sort of the dual mechanism of the hunter-farmer approach, right? The farmer can go and grab a piece of that profit, alleviate that pressure a bit, like one of those pressure release valves, and then that enables the hunter to just step back, open up the creativity, and now look at the longer term plans that we probably already prepared for, longer term levels, and where could this go, and where's a range stat from here, and all of those sorts of things, to say, okay, am I gonna go for the bigger win on this or not? And I heard a great sort of quote, or I think it was a tweet I saw this week from one of the trader guys that I follow on there. It was something an old pit trader told him about, you know, when you're sort of getting that itch to exit a trade, because of course, you know, if we're taking these P1s frequently, we will end up with trades that will just go for a range stat, right? And it will turn into one of those monster moves. Sometimes, like the one I've got that cliff trade up, I think, that you were talking about the other day, Ken, from Friday. And you know, it's a sniper trade of the day, but there's a P1 aspect to that too. And you know, that was just one of those days that goes range stat and a bit more, right? And just beautiful trending days. So when you do catch those, the temptation I often get is to tap out early, right? Because it's like, ooh, this is pretty good profit, and maybe I've taken a few losses, or you know, just partial losses. Oh, I can make up for them and then still have some profit in the bag here. But really, we need to trade the trade for the trade. What's the frame? What's the potential that we can see? And anyways, the tweet that this guy sent out, which was something that stuck with him from an old pit trader, was I'm gonna paraphrase, something along the lines of, if you're trying to get to California, don't get off at Chicago. So know where this thing could go and where you'd like it to go. Don't get off at Chicago just because the train stopped at Chicago. You might get off at Chicago once we sort of seem like we're hesitating, and we get a signal to say, get off this train a bit early. We're not going to make it to California this time. But the whole idea is we're trying to get to California. We got to take another train after this. So can we just stick on this train and end up at the destination? So I really kind of like that one. I'm not going to go on much longer. But the exercise number 2, I identified with a lot. So this is, you know, sort of identify a problem that you know that one of your superiors wants solved, devote an hour of free time to brainstorming it, you know, get some solutions going. Basically, having maybe not completed it, put it out there that you're gonna complete it, that you need to talk about it. Now, I've gone through these as well. Now, sometimes this is like setting a deadline for yourself. And in my experience, when I've set deadlines for myself, I don't respect them as much if it's an external deadline, because it's like, I set that deadline, I can move that or something. So you know, in doing something like this, exercise 2, you know, you could tell your superior that, oh yeah, I've got an idea for this, I'll talk about it next week. And my first thing I said to Saul on this one was, yeah, okay, your superior is going to come back to you and say, oh, well, just tell me now. Let's not wait till next week. At which point you might panic a little bit. Oh, shit, we're not fully thought it through yet. But no, so for me though, having that external sort of deadline or that external sort of accountability, that's something that you've put out there is what can kind of drive that home. And so in that regard, there's something that I've been talking about doing for a little bit now, and I'm going to use you guys as my accountability team to kind of hold me to account on this. And so the idea here is it's a system development related idea. And so I won't go into super detail on this, but the idea that I was sort of noodling over the holiday break was putting together something where we act. Here's my camera again. Putting together something where we actively put together something like 5 different systems, and these will probably be automated systems. And people have asked me about doing an automated sort of coding course or something like that. And so I might be able to wrap this in on that. But the idea here is to put, say, 5 systems together, put them out, finish them, run through the whole systems development process on them, go through a position sizing exercise with the aim of putting these live in the market, with an aim of doubling the account. So making it a very aggressive sort of target just in order to see if we can do it. Now, the idea here is not to necessarily get there. It's to go through the process of doing it, and specifically using position sizing to try to get to the objectives and that sort of thing, and putting a time limit on it. And so the idea for me is sort of like around, well, being a deadline of Q1. So trying to get within Q1. Let's see if we can pull it off. And I think it's totally doable. And by saying it out to you guys, it's going to make me pull my finger out and actually kind of make it happen. So you guys need to kick me up the ass if I'm not doing anything on this. But so that is me kind of coming to you guys as my superiors and saying, look, this is what I'm going to put out there, and then we're gonna talk about it. And what actually happens as the outcome is less important than the process of actually doing it. So anyway, that's enough on that, I think, for today. We've been on for quite some time. We had a lot of people on today. Thank you. Really enjoyed everybody. I've made a whole bunch of notes on things I wanted to bring up on most of you, but we'll have more opportunities to do that. Everyone's doing great work, and thank you so much for sharing. Aho.
All right, I'm gonna hit the tones and then solicit your one-word items. My list of debriefings I'm going to put into tonight's podcast, because normally Sunday there's no other charts have been posted. So I'm going to put the details in there. I'm also going to post that video as a supplement to this one, because there's some really good ones. So we'll hit the tone and listen for your one word for focus, and off we go. Tom Sullivan.
Accountability.
Ernie.
Inspired.
Tom Hardison.
Brain.
Recognize. From Master Shi. Chunlong.
Boiler.
Kyun.
Dogs.
Sonal.
Springboard.
Jeffrey.
Urgency.
Mine is emergency. If you think of the root word emergent, that just means here it comes. So I will close by saying there's a really good short novel story, a novella by Hermann Hesse back in the 20s and 30s. And the name is Damien, Demian. And it talks about, in his particularly romantic German style, about the process, what it feels like of the bird coming out of the egg in the form of a phoenix and all that stuff. It is, and what it feels like to feel that rising pressure inside these bands of constricting. He was a young man in life in the 20s and 30s and whatnot, a time of incredible turbulence in Germany and Europe. And so the book Damien and the imagery of all that is really quite compelling. I can remember reading that when I was I was probably about 20 when I read that. So Hermann Hesse, author of the Glass Bead Game and the one about the werewolf. But yeah, Damien is a really powerful, quick and easy read on that too. Anyway, well done, folks. We shall see you soon. We got a couple more weeks left on this one where we're going to finish up. And I'm looking to, I got a few people already interested and I think that are committed to as the new cohort of white belts or whatever, if we can say it that way. I'm going to keep the Sunday morning and Monday evening setups. As needed, we can do sort of the advanced students if we want to do a separate one, whatever. But and you guys are encouraged to come in and do that if that's what you want to do as our guests, because you're going to be doing the work anyway. As an inspiration to others, and what those are going to become is really people come in and tell the true story about the lesson they happened to be on. Those people are going to have the advantage in that they will have read the lessons, maybe done the exercises, but also listened to us on our testimony of what it was like to go through there. And so, they actually got more work to do than we do, because they got to live with what we've discovered as the initial trailblazers. And then finally, Jeff, I would say, I'll remind you what the train conductor tells you. Son, this train goes to Chicago. I know you want to go to California. This train goes to Chicago. But in Chicago, at Union Station, is where all the trains going west depart.
Right.
So if you want to take a train to Chicago, if you want to take a train to California and you're on this train, you got to go to Chicago and then transfer at all points west.
Yeah, I hear you.
Your feet, horses, cars, and trucks to a certain extent can go where you want, can go where they're going to go, but trains go where the tracks are. So on the industrial level, son, this train goes to Chicago. I'm not saying you can't get to California, but this train's going to Chicago.
Yeah, I hear you.
But that's good to know where it's going, because now you can plan.
Right.
And you can look at so I think of Union Station all the time as, the place where all of these trains are going. Local haul, line haul, all of that stuff. And I like your idea of the system of systems and the accountability of it. That's essentially what hybrid trading is the blending the meta system. And really take a look at the 3-day, 9-day briefing I gave last night, and the ability of using the MACD histogram for the seasonality to find the charts that you want and where in the cycle you want. There is magic in the 9-day bar. Of the millions of traders who are out there, how many of them are looking at 9-day bars?
Yeah, nobody probably.
Nobody. So you know something that nobody else knows. And when you combine that with the 3-day, that power of 3 is not to be underestimated. Because a 3-day bar smooths out all of that gappy shit.
Right.
and that can get you the first position, and the 9-day confirmation can give you the second 2/3. And when those 9-day PSAR trends, holy smokes! Then go take a look at what I was talking about this weekend, at where the market is with respect to 9-day bars in the PSAR. It
Right
is
now?
right on the cusp and holding. And the 3-day bars are showing higher lows, and so
Yeah.
there's something in there. All right, guys, well done.
Will do.
Thanks for hanging in there, and we shall see you on down the road.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye bye.
everyone.